Today I've got a new nail art look for you, and yeah, this time it's actually the start of my new series. I was done with the fairy tale, so now I'm moving on to legends and myths, all that stuff, so let's get started. As a background, I'm using nail polishes. I'll list all the nail polishes I've used down below in the description box as always, along with anything else I've used. And I also, I just applied 2 layers of nail polish and then I buffed them to give them sort of a bit of a rough surface. Just because it makes it easier to paint on, the paint won't slide around as much. Paint I'm using is just regular cheap acrylic paints. There's no brand on it, so I have no idea what brand it was, but they were really cheap. And some nail art brushes that I got off eBay. Some of them, like this one, I actually chopped down a little. Just because, you know, the tinier the brush, the more details you can do. So I just used nail pliers for that, and yeah, that's it. And the story I was inspired by today is the story of Prince Teigue and his accidental journey to an Elven island. I have no idea how to pronounce his name, by the way. But yeah, I mean, Irish people probably know how to pronounce his name because it's actually an Irish legend, myth, whatever. But yeah, you can see how he's called in the title of the video. But anyway, yeah, he was the son of a king, obviously, him being a prince and all. But there were a lot of people trying to conquer the lands, and yeah, one day his wife got caught by one of those people, along with some of his brothers. So yeah, he was left with about 40 soldiers, and he was like, okay, I need to somehow find a way to defeat this guy who did this, and I don't know how. So he decided to build a very strong ship and just start traveling, searching for an answer. I really don't know why that was a logical thing to do, because the stories I read, they didn't quite explain why that was the logical step to take. But maybe it was too dangerous to stay in his own country, I don't know. Besides, sitting still and doing nothing wouldn't be very useful anyway. But the point is, so yeah, he had this very strong ship built. And they started sailing, and then after a while they got caught up in a storm. After 2 months of just sailing around, not finding a solution to the problem, obviously. He actually, they actually got caught up in a storm, a huge storm. So yeah, the ship was just thrown about, there was no sun visible in the sky. No stars either, so by the time everything was done, they had absolutely no clue where they were. In those days there were no cell phones, there was no GPS, there was no navigation, so they had absolutely no idea where they were and no way at all to find out. So yeah, they did the only thing they could do. They just, sat on the ship and waited to encounter land. Which at some point they actually did. It was an island which seemed at first to mainly consist of forest. But the weird thing was that the forest was actually in full bloom. In their own home, pardon. In their own home country there was only the start of spring. So yeah, there were barely any leaves on the trees yet. Yet on this particular island it seemed like it was full on spring and summer at the same time. There were leaves on the trees, but there was also fruit on the trees. Now I don't know a lot about plants, but I know for a start that apple trees actually only have apples in autumn, I think, if I'm right. I could be wrong, I'm not very good at plant stuff. But yeah, either way, they were in full bloom, yet they also wore fruit. So yeah, and another thing was that they were all trees that were holy in Ireland, oak trees and stuff like that, and apple trees. Then of course in a lot of myths, apples are supposed to be the fruits that gave the gods their immortality and stuff like that. So yeah, that in itself was slightly strange. So they walked through the forest until there was really no forest anymore and it was more like a park, and then they ended up on a hill. And on the hill was a woman who somehow knew Teigue's name. And unlike me, she probably also knew how to pronounce it. So yeah, she just sent them through to the next hill, where the same thing happened, and then finally they ended up at a castle. Why the castle couldn't be at the first hill was never explained. Why they had to go to the second hill first rather than directly to the castle from the first hill was also never explained. But either way, they ended up at the castle. And in the middle of the grounds, at the center of the castle where there's no buildings. I don't know what it's called, I'm also not an expert on castles. But anyway, there was a huge apple tree with blossom on it, but also fruits. And from that tree floated down a beautiful woman which probably weirded them out slightly as well. But at that point everything was so weird they probably weren't all that surprised anymore. Either way, she also obviously knew Teigue's name and also probably knew how to pronounce it. And yeah, she actually told them her name as well. Which is also completely unpronounceable to me. Cleotna or something like that. Again, it's an Irish myth, so Irish people probably do know how to pronounce it. Sorry for butchering the name, but I just don't know how to pronounce it. But she was a daughter of the fairy folk, and the island belonged to her, obviously. And yeah, she also told them that like the fruits had such a power that an immortal man would never be hungry again if he ate one of them. But they would also forever be yearning to come back to her island. There's always a catch after all. And she also warned them that a day in her lands would be the same as a year in the mortal world. So yeah, if you stay there for a week, 7 years will have passed in your own world. And you don't even want to imagine what would have happened in your own world if you would stay there for a year. Yeah, pretty much everyone you knew would be long gone by the time you'd get back. So yeah, at that point, you know, they probably really wanted to get out of there. But anyway, she actually helped them get out of there, and she did that by sending down 3 birds from the trees, which are also described in the story. One of them was blue with a red head, one of them was red with a green head, and one of them had many colors and a golden head, which is what I'm painting on these nails. It was sort of a difficult task to try and, you know, portray a golden bird head on a nail, but anyway. But yeah, so the birds actually led them back to his home country. And she also told them, by the way, that yeah, he would defeat the guy who tried to conquer his lands. However, at some point in time, he will get killed by a deer, a wild deer. And on that day, she would be with him. That sounds more like a vague threat than a promise to me. But anyway, he just took it as a, you know, whatever. Okay, nice to know. Blah. And left, and indeed the birds led them back home, and then they defeated the conquerors, and everything was well, just until indeed years after he got killed by a wild deer, and she indeed came to visit him while he was dying. So yep, and that was the entire story as I read it. And yeah, I find it quite an interesting story. Like, it does portray, of course, how much people did actually believe in the fairy world and everything back in the day, and that's just really, really cool, I think. I don't know, just like believing that there's a whole different world than ours and it's full of magic and stuff like that. I also find it interesting though that in Legends there's always a catch as well. Really sort of like portraying that it's, I don't know, that there's like a whole magical world, but it's also a very dangerous world to mortals. But anyway, yeah, that was this particular Legends. Yeah, and what I painted on my nails obviously was the storm, a tree, and the birds. And yeah, right here I'm just doing some finishing touches by just adding some almost 3D material to the nails. And I'm finishing it up with a matte top coat this time, just because I think it makes the paint, I don't know, a little bit easier to see than if it were shiny. And yeah, that wraps up this entire nail art. I really hope you enjoyed the first start of this new series. If you have any Legends you know and you would like to, you know, see on my nails, please tell me, because I'm always looking for more ideas. I have a gazillion ideas already, but some of them are only really suitable for Halloween. But anyway, yeah, if you did enjoy this video, please click the like button, it would really help me out. And if you want to, you can also subscribe to my channel. For now, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!